This is The Road Show, and I'm your host, David Warren. Trust me when I say this is going to be another great road show. Joining me in studio is Sean Kouplen, Chairman and CEO of Regent Bank, which has locations in various Oasis listening areas, but is based right here in my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, I have heard about Sean for years, especially recently, as he has started a new national movement. It's called 94X. Everything changes when you bring God into your business. Let's welcome our very special guest, Mr. Sean Kouplen.
Oh, thank you so much, David. It's truly an honor to be here.
Well, I am going to call you a numbers guy. And we're going to dive into this 94X, which happens to be a number. But let's start with the number 15. You have served as chairman and CEO of Regent Bank for over 15 years. And although today's program is not about banking, I love the story of how you got into banking. And you were in the right place at the right time.
Yes,
Tell us that story, Sean.
So I grew up on a farm in Beggs, Oklahoma, just south of here, about 15 minutes south. And my grandfather and father both raised Hereford cattle. Well, I thought that's what I was going to do. I was about a semester from graduating from Oklahoma State University, and my dad informed me that I needed to go get a real job. The farm was not going to support us all. So that was a shock. I had about 3 weeks left in the spring semester. Then I had the summer off, and then I was going to graduate in the fall. So 2 days after this occurred, I am driving to Stillwater, Oklahoma, to Oklahoma State University, and I had been invited to this Board of Regents dinner. And there was Jim Halligan, our president, me, and 5 members of the Board of Regents at this round table. And I know Dr. Halligan was just trying to get me to talk. I was real nervous at the time. And he said, Sean, I've been meaning to ask you, what are you going to do when you graduate from college? Well, 2 days earlier, I learned it wasn't going to be farming. So I really didn't know. And I was too embarrassed to say that I didn't know. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I got to come up with something quickly. And so I look to my left, and the guy sitting there has a nameplate that says Bruce Benbrook, Chairman, Stock Exchange Bank, Woodward, Oklahoma. And my thought process was he had on a nice suit. Mm-hmm. He was a member of the Board of Regents. Banking just sounded distinguished at the time. Maybe not so much today, but back then it did. And so I said, I've actually been thinking about going into banking. And everybody at the table was like, what? We had no idea you were going into banking. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, it's a very recent career decision. And it was 12 seconds old. So they started asking me all these questions about banking. I bluffed my way through dinner. And Dr. Halligan really changed my whole life when we are leaving this event. We're walking together, and he says, Sean, I didn't know you wanted to go into banking. He said, I have a good friend that owns a group of banks in Oklahoma City. Maybe I can help you get an internship. So I got my resume, got it to him. He followed through on his word. He helped me get an internship, and that is how my banking career began. I went to work for MidFirst Bank as an intern in Oklahoma City, got hired back after college, and the rest, as they say, is history.
So I'm assuming, Sean, that your love for banking grew, even though that was a quick decision on your part.
I loved everything about it. I never really thought of it as a career option, but once I had the experience, I love numbers, as you said, really love people. And the beautiful part about banking is that when you do it right, you are fully aligned with your client. You want them to be successful. They want to be successful. You're both rowing in the same direction. So it's not like I'm trying to sell my clients something that they don't need or want. They want success, and I want them to achieve their goals. So we're working together. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful career. I was over promoted my whole career, and at the age of 34, had the opportunity to buy Regent Bank. And here we are 15 years later, and it's the blessing of my life.
Is that unheard of? A person in your case, mid-30s buying a bank?
I think I was the youngest to ever be able to do that. Now, I had investors. It wasn't like I had millions of dollars. I was only 34 years old. So I put an investor group together, kind of led the charge, have been chairman and CEO ever since. And it has been wild. I mean, I can't tell you what the Lord has done within the company.
Listeners, I don't know about where you live, but here in Tulsa, there is a church and a bank on about every corner. So with so many banks in our city, of course, you have banks now in various cities across our listening area, but with so many banks already existing, what made you want to start a new bank?
I was working in banking, obviously, at the time. And I always had this vision of what a community bank could be. I thought that it could be very responsive and very nimble and could help the clients where they were. And I thought that you could have a culture where people really felt valued and loved. Now, I didn't really know that faith was going to have such an important role at that time. Mm-hmm. That really happened as my relationship, with Jesus grew stronger. But I just had this vision. I felt like the Lord had given me this vision. And the opportunity to buy the bank was a surprise. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was a friend of mine had owned it. They were struggling, and we began talking. And so it wasn't really something that I had planned. But when the opportunity presented itself, all of these feelings of excitement and this vision came back to me. My wife was supportive. It was a crazy thing to do financially. I was running a large organization here. We went and bought a teeny tiny organization, couldn't even afford to take a paycheck for a long period of time. But over time, it has grown into a very large regional institution in 7 markets, and it has far exceeded what I ever thought it would be.
And let's make sure that we mention that Regent Bank is now a $1.3 billion, that's with a B, $1.3 billion institution. And another feather in your cap, thanks to the Lord, I'll be quick to add that as you're nodding yes on radio.
Yes.
Regent Bank was named as one of Inc.'s Best Workplaces for 2023. How did you make that list? And by the way, as far as I know, Regent Bank is the only bank across America that made it on the list.
Yes. We're the only financial institution, period. So there wasn't another bank, there wasn't another credit union that made that list. Tens of thousands of businesses apply. I think it's 60,000 businesses apply. 500 are chosen. The reason we're so proud of that honor is because it's based upon our employees' anonymous feedback. So we gave them all of the programs that we have, the ways we try to sew into our employees, the reason we think we're different. But the main reason we were chosen is because of how our employees feel about their work. And so it's very, very meaningful. Only 3 companies from Oklahoma were chosen, and 1 bank in the entire country was chosen, and it was Regent Bank.
Well, congratulations to all the people at Regent Bank, at all the branches. Okay, so we're getting to that number that we really want to talk about, which is the number 94. But first, let me mention that today's guest, Sean Kouplen, has also served as Secretary of Commerce for my state of Oklahoma. What does the Secretary of Commerce do?
The Secretary of Commerce is responsible for economic development within the state. He or she is responsible for community development within the state, and just the business climate in general. And so during my time, so I was in there from 2020 to almost 2023. So that was COVID time. So we had about 6 to 8 months of normal, where we're developing recruitment strategies and how to grow the economy and how to grow the existing businesses and keep them here and all those types of things. And then COVID hits. And so my role ended up being developing COVID recovery programs, for businesses around the state. We were able to help keep about 9,000 businesses going that would have gone under otherwise. to communicate to them what programs were out there. So every Wednesday, I had 8-hour-long sessions, pretty much all day long, on Zoom for different industries, letting them know what was out there and available and any data that we could give them to help them survive. We were the ones that determined essential and non-essential businesses during the time. Now in Oklahoma, pretty much everybody was essential as long as you weren't breathing directly on people or touching them in some way. We tried to keep every business going. And of course, we were the first state to open fully back up. So, I mean, really by June 1, thanks to the governor and his strong leadership, us in Georgia, both opened up initially. So we try to keep everybody going. We just didn't feel like shutting down businesses was the answer.
Okay, we are now to the number 94. You have started a new national movement called 94X. Everything changes when you bring God into your business. So let's crunch the numbers, as they say. Tell us about the number 94.
So 94 is 160 divided by 1.7. And it's not exactly 94. It's a 94 and a fraction, but we just rounded it back to 94. And what the number means is 160 is the number of hours that our employees work for us in a month, 40 hours a week.
Not just at Regent, but
just in general.
In general.
Right. Just for a typical person works a 40-hour work week, 4 weeks are in a month, and so 160 hours. And then via several statistics, including Barna, the average American goes to church 1.7 hours per month. And so when you divide those two, what 94X tells you is that as a Christian business leader, and this is what the Lord placed upon my heart, that as a Christian business leader, I have my employees in my care 94 times more than the average one goes to church. Now, I love church. I'm an elder. I'm a founder of my church. I preach when the pastor needs a break. It's been wonderful for our family. We're there every single Sunday. The problem is many people are not. And so what 94X, the movement, is about, how can we bring the love of God into our businesses in a way that is not illegal. It does not make anybody uncomfortable. It doesn't force them to do anything whatsoever. It really just shows them a new level of caring and love. And what we have found is it's unbelievably powerful. It is almost magical. The success that the bank has had, for example.
Were you the prototype?
There are many. What I have learned is that there are many companies all over the world who practice this. Okay. Unfortunately, most companies were like me. So let me give you an example. 5 years ago, I was sitting in church and the Lord clearly called me to start a devotional for my team. It came out of the blue. It wasn't even anything I had been considering, but I know for a fact it was very, very clear to me. I turned it down. I basically rejected God at that time because I told him, you can't do that. I said, you can't do that. This must be 1960s God. 70s God talking to me, because you can't do that anymore. You can. People just do not understand. They think that it falls in with, you can't pray in schools.
Like
you can't.
Separation of church and state.
Exactly. And it has nothing to do with it. This is totally different. These are adults working at a workplace who can make their own decisions. The only thing the law says is I cannot force you to pray or have a religious activity in a certain way, and I cannot judge you based upon whether you do or not. So I can't promote you because you came to my prayer meeting. I can't demote you because you didn't. And as long as you remember those things, you can absolutely bring God in.
So how does bringing God into, for example, Regent Bank, how does that change the atmosphere at Regent Bank?
It's very difficult for me to put into words the power of bringing God into your business. It has changed everything about our company. Our employees are happier. Their lives at home are happier. We have had multiple employees come to Christ at our bank. We have had multiple miracles occur. We have a prayer team of about 40 employees that pray for each other, our clients, our communities, anybody that needs it. You just send us an email. We have experienced multiple answers to prayer. The devotional, which started with 7 people, has now had 200,000 callers because our employees begin sharing it out. We've never had any marketing. And we practice what's called relational leadership, which is just extreme love for our fellow employees. So it's hard for me to put it into words, but believe me when I tell you, the Regent Bank that Sean Kouplen ran and the Regent Bank that God now runs are totally different organizations.
You made reference just now to a number that people can call. And so everybody needs to have paper and pen ready when the roadshow is on. But it's a toll-free number. In fact, I called in today, Tuesday, and you typically do Tuesdays. And it is at 8:17 a.m. Central, so 9:17 for our Eastern listening area people right now. And it goes for about 13 minutes. And the toll-free number is 1-888-630-4807. 888-630-4807. And so I happen to be in gridlock traffic on the Broken Arrow Expressway under construction currently. And so I just pushed that or had that dial pre-done and hit go and listened on Bluetooth in my car. And I had my devotion this morning with you.
That's what tens of thousands of people do every morning. It's remarkable. It literally started with 7 people. And on a typical call, we'll have anywhere from 40 to 60,000 on the call, but we have had now over 200,000 unique callers, all 50 states, 4 foreign countries. And if you're interested in calling, it's on Uber Conference. And so you go straight into the call, as you know. Mm-hmm. We mute all of the callers. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have to do anything. You just call. You can be driving. You can be working. You can be doing whatever and just listen in for 13 minutes. It's a great way to start the day. It's truly what changed my life.
But this is one of the many ways that you, where you work, where you have influence, are being a part of this 94X movement. You know, when you think about that, you spend as a business leader, when you spend 94 times more time with your employees than a pastor currently spends with the people in his or her congregation, that almost takes you to another level of, I'm over you as far as I'm responsible for your performance on the job, but it takes you to another level of there's a stronger sense of responsibility with how I interact with you.
Yes. It's a shepherd. The feeling that I have is that I am the shepherd for my employees. And one of my favorite stories is there was a shepherd in West Texas who had about 2,000 head of sheep. It was a beautiful day. The sun was going down. It was getting dark. And he began to hear wolves and coyotes in the distance howling, predators coming after his sheep. And so he built a bonfire right in the middle of the field. And all the sheep came around. And as he was stoking the fire to try to protect them, he looked out and saw 4,000 little lights of 4,000 eyes looking back at him. And the reason I think this is so important is that as leaders, we have to realize that the more dangerous that the world feels to people and more uncertain that it feels, they're not looking at the danger. They're looking to the leader to protect them and guide them and help them. And if we choose to live in fear or we choose to not follow God's principles, then that's what they're going to follow. But if we choose to trust in God and believe for the best for our company, for our employees, and we choose to bring in love, it can be an oasis, if you will, for those employees. Work can actually be a place of comfort and of energy and of love and care. It doesn't have to be a place of fear, in a place where is my boss going to fire me today? Are we going to stay in business today? It doesn't have to be that way. So that's been our experience. It's amazing.
I'm David Warren here with our very special guest, Sean Kouplen, and although he is the chairman and CEO of Regent Bank, we've switched hats now. He is the one who has started this 94X movement, as we have just mentioned. But I was thinking, Sean, how, people who want to become a pastor often will go to Bible school or attend seminary, but there is no real training until now for the business leader, not necessarily of a Christian organization, because Regent Bank isn't a, quote, Christian bank. It's a bank where a lot of Christians bank and work. But there is no training for this. So that's the idea that God gave you with this movement. And so I'm actually physically holding in my left hand a book called 94X, and in my right hand a workbook called 94X. And so when we come back, we're going to unpack what it takes to be a 94X ambassador or leader, okay? Sean Kouplen's here, David Warren. We'll both be back after this. I'm David Warren here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world. Oasis Network. I just told our guest that I'm having to kind of calm myself down because I'm really excited about this 94X movement. Now, I don't know if he knows this or not, but I signed up for a 94X roundtable. Okay, you're nodding again on radio, Sean. I've got to train you to say.
I heard a little birdie told me that you had signed up with us. I'm so excited.
I believe in this. And now what's interesting is typically you had in mind that this would be for leaders in the secular workplace, but I'm an example of I work at a ministry. And I want to be around these kind of people. And these principles that you train your secular business leaders in, I want to be trained in.
Yes.
Because again, going back to that, when you think of this 94 times more time you spend as a leader with your employees than a pastor spends with his or her congregation, it takes you to more than I'm responsible for you having a paycheck. I'm responsible for helping you make it through the storms of life. Because the numbers are saying most of you aren't going to church. And I know you want people to go to church. In fact, this morning, talk about a little birdie, I was tipped off that you all were brainstorming how to get people back into church.
The two work together. We are not trying to replace church at all. We just believe we are a way to touch people with the love of Jesus that they might not otherwise feel. And then we can plug them into a church. That's all we're trying to do. The two absolutely are complementary.
Okay, I'm going to read just a tad from your preface here from the 94X book. It comes in hardback and in paperback. And you say, in 2002, Pastor Rick Warren wrote a 334-page book entitled The Purpose-Driven Life. What on earth am I here for? The book sold over 30 million copies worldwide and changed the lives of countless people. And one of those people is you. What was so impactful about this book in your life?
I was like a lot of people in my late 20s and early 30s. I was really struggling to find my purpose. I really struggled with scarcity mentality. I wanted to be successful. I was looking at the world's example of success. And I just wasn't happy. I had a good job. I had a good family. And what I now know is that I was living with a great deal of fear. I just didn't have the abiding relationship with Jesus that I have today. And I didn't fully trust in him in my life. Well, a friend of mine gave me that book, The Purpose-Driven Life. And as I put in our preface, I distinctly remember the moment I read it and everything began to make sense. And the thing that began to make sense to me was that life was not about me. My problem was I was making life about Sean Kouplen and my movement up the corporate ladder and my being known by everybody and, making good money for my family and having a certain title. As Purpose-Driven Life explains, and we further explain in 94X, it's not about us. It's about serving others and bringing the love of Jesus to them. We're only here but a wisp of air. And while we are here, we have to make an eternal impact. And so when that switch occurred in my life, I became happier. Success followed behind that. Impact on people's lives went to a whole other level. And it just is, as I say in there, I've realized that life is more fulfilling when you make it about others, more about others and less about yourself.
I want to go ahead and mention the website, 94xmovement.com, 94xmovement.com. That's the numbers 94, the letter X movement.com. And you have said we a few times so far during this segment. And so I want to mention that this book is by you, Sean Kouplen. Very interesting spelling on your name, S-E-A-N. I've heard of that before, but Kouplen, Kouplen. But then it's also co-written by Mick, and I'm not going to attempt this last name. Skubanek. Tell us about your partner writing this book.
So this is our second book to write, third. This is actually Mick and I's third book to write together. We wrote The Abundance Mentality, 3 Strands, and now 94X. He is my best friend. He has taught me selflessness. He's probably the most selfless person that I have ever known, and I just wanted him at my side for this deal. He wrote the majority of our last book, 3 Strands. I wrote the majority of 94X, but we are partners together.
Okay, so we're speaking to a large audience in Jesus' name right now, and a lot of people are people of influence where they work. Many are working in a secular workplace. So let's talk about who are good candidates to become 94X ambassadors. Who do you envision being a part of this national movement?
David, you mentioned it earlier, but what we have found is that it's broader than what we initially thought. Initially, I felt like our singular target was Christian business leaders. I felt like and it's very important that your listeners understand what we are not trying to do. There are many, many efforts out there to help leaders grow. Okay, we are not a leadership development movement. We're not a C12 or a Christian Businessmen Association. We're not that. We are trying to connect with a Christian leader. And what we have learned is it can be in a nonprofit, it can be in a church, it can be in a school, primarily a private school, it can be in a family. It's wherever you are leading, we can help you bring Jesus to those people that you are leading. This is a how-to movement. It isn't, we're going to make you a stronger leader or a stronger believer. That's not what we're doing. A lot of people do that. We are specifically saying, and let me be very crystal clear on how this came to me. We have an event here in Tulsa called Faith in Business. We have 250 business leaders attend every month. It's wonderful. You hear a business leader share their testimony. It's very encouraging. I had gone back to the bank and I sat down at my desk and the Lord said, your employees aren't getting any of that. Mm-hmm. It was as if there was a wall. It was like I was going out and getting fed and encouraged and all the things that I needed. But what about the newest teller that's out there on the teller line or the call center representative answering the phone? How am I bringing that back to them? That's what we're about. That's what we're trying to do. So anyone that wants to do that into their business, into their family, into their nonprofit, into their any organization they're involved in, that's who our target is.
And you're wanting to train your 94X ambassadors to do just what you have explained in your case of at Regent Bank. But there are 12 principles that you list in the 94X book and accompanying workbook. And the first one I love, the principle of authenticity. And I think that's why our mutual friend and I guess my predecessor here on the Roadshow, Kim Spence, and I like you so much because you're an authentic guy, an authentic leader, and you sense that about you, and you have a real heart for people. Now, the next principle I would like to touch on during today's program is the principle of courage. And read that chapter, if you would. It's a short chapter.
Sure.
And I think you'll understand what I'm talking about.
I'd be happy to. To be an effective 94X leader, we must lead with courage. When God instructs us to do something, we must obey no matter how scary or unusual the situation. In 1 Chronicles 28:20, King David said to Solomon his son, "Be strong and courageous and do the work. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord God, my God, is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you until all the work for the service of the temple of the Lord is finished." Years before God shared the 94X vision with me, He called me to start a daily devotional for my team. I was sitting in church and listening to the sermon when God clearly gave me the direction. I tried to ignore Him, but He just kept nudging me while I was driving, eating lunch, taking a shower, and coaching baseball. The calling was unmistakable, and I was petrified. I'll never forget the terrifying moment I stood in front of our employees at our monthly meeting and told them I would be starting a Bible study. "Team, this is something I feel called to do," I said. "I don't want anybody to feel pressured to attend. This is a personal Bible study and not sponsored by the bank. You won't receive any preferential treatment if you attend or retribution if you don't. It's completely up to you." This Bible study started with 7 people and has now touched lives all over the world. I am so blessed and humbled to be part of this ministry, but it never would have happened if I didn't have the courage to follow God's call. The principle of courage plays out in many ways in a 94X culture. First of all, if the boss, God, is calling us to do something, we must do it. This might include the daily devotional, creating a prayer team, praying after meetings, offering to pray for coworkers, simply asking coworkers if they're okay, starting a community Bible study, or whatever God calls us to do. We must have courage to further His kingdom.
I love that. And you mentioned that this is legal.
100% legal. To offer it. It's extremely important that everybody understand what I cannot do as a Christian leader is require my employees to come to some religious service. I cannot do that. If they believe differently or they feel uncomfortable, we have a number of people. We just had an amazing breakthrough with a young man in our organization that was an atheist and pretty overt about the fact that he thought this was all silly and I love him, he loves me, and I told him I love him no matter who he worships. I just happen to worship Jesus, and he is now a believer because of the love that we showed him. We didn't judge him, and we didn't make him do anything. He just saw the difference that it made in the people within our organization.
So, Sean, let's go over some of the things specifically you do at Regent Bank, where you're showing your courage, so to speak. So you have a prayer meeting. So is it before work?
So we have a prayer team. And let me just explain how simple this can be if we will just obey, which is another one of the principles. One morning, I'm actually preparing for the devotional. I'm up early. I'm in prayer. I am and I'm having a wonderful time with the Lord, and I feel Him tell me that Regent should be a praying organization. So, and not just me, that there should be, we should be a praying company. So I pray, what does that look like? What does that look like? And as I'm driving into work, I get this idea that we could just have a prayer team. that there were probably employees within our company that would like to pray for others. They're intercessors. They like to do that. And so I sit down at my desk, I log onto my computer, I jump onto the email, I type out an email to everybody within the organization, and prayer team is the subject of the email. And it very simply, I say, team, I am feeling led to put together a prayer team here at the bank. And I just want to offer, if you are interested in joining this team, here's what it looks like, in my mind. And email me back if you're interested. Mm-hmm. Out of about 200 employees, about 40 people emailed back. I prayed over who would lead that within the organization. And there was a young lady who actually helps to lead the daily devotional named Brittany, who I felt called to lead it. I asked her if she would. She said she would love to, and the prayer team was born. So we set up within Outlook an address that is simply prayerteam@regent.bank. And I want to mention that because we now get hundreds of prayer requests from outside of the bank. And so if anybody wishes, if you need prayer, please feel free to email prayerteam@regent.bank. And that has led to praying all day, all the time. As soon as we get a prayer request, it gets distributed out to all of us. We stop and pray in the moment, and we also pray corporately every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. So from about 8 to about 8:30, the whole team is on a Zoom call. We are praying for everyone, and that's what it looks like.
Another one of the 12 principles of 94X ambassadorship is the principle of generosity. And Sean, you write, at Regent Bank, we love to be generous to our employees, clients, and communities. We send flowers to all new employees, provide a very nice profit-sharing program, share equity with key players, and offer an employee benevolence fund for those employees dealing with unexpected financial challenges. We offer free training and informational sessions to our clients and provide free banking to all nonprofit organizations. We provide a free luncheon series to our communities, including the 94X series, Executive Luncheon Series, and Nonprofit Leadership Series. I share these things not to brag, but to say that God has blessed us beyond measure. Generosity shows that we trust in God for our provision. If we begin to hoard our earnings and not be generous, we are relying on ourselves and not on our Heavenly Father. It is true that we cannot outgive God. 94X organizations, according to you, Sean, must be generous.
They must be generous. And the reason, so I spent months praying over these principles. David, I mean, it's critical that your listeners know that these were not just from me. But here is what would happen. So let's say Sean is leading the 94X movement within my company. And we start small. So one of the things that we find is that you want to crawl before you walk. So maybe we have a morning prayer meeting and we invite people in, or maybe we have a Bible study, and it opens the door and we begin to become a more loving and God-centered organization. But everybody in the organization knows that I am stingy. Okay, I don't pay well. I don't treat my employees well. When they have a need, I don't meet it. It's clear that it's all about maximizing the dollars into my pocket. How are they going to feel about me as a faith-based leader? That it's not consistent. It's not consistent with who Jesus was, and it's not consistent with who we should be as leaders. It's the same as the principle of authenticity. If I am talking the talk one way within the walls of my company and living a complete other way, I had a boss one time that we would have a community Bible study in the back of our bank. And then right after that, we would go to the front of the bank. We would have loan committee, and he would scream and yell. And the same guy, it was 15 minutes later. Your witness is killed when those things happen. We have to be consistent all the way around, or a movement like this will not prevail within a company.
The final principle of relationship that I want to mention during this segment is the principle of relationship. And this is one that all 94 ex-ambassadors must have. What does relationship look like at your place of business where you are the leader, Regent Bank?
David, you mentioned it earlier, but it goes beyond. So instead of, if you're my employee, instead of me looking at you as a means to an end, okay, David, if you'll work harder and better, sell more stuff, do a better job, I'll make more money, or our shareholders will do better, or whatever. I don't do that anymore. I look at you as a person, somebody that I care about, that is valued as an individual. So let me tell you a brief story which I think will help to encapsulate this. There was a young lady in our company, and we're going to call her Catherine. She had just started with the bank. She had been there about 90 days. I meet with every new employee after they've been there for 90 days. And I ask them 3 questions. 1, tell me your story. 2, are we living our core values? And 3, what can we do better? Now, the third reason is the real reason I meet with them, because they've been there 90 days. They see all the things we could do better. It's been our greatest source of improvement. But in this situation, I asked this young lady to tell me her story. Now, she is very well presented, very well dressed. I remember she had on these great shoes. And in my mind, I think she's a private school educated, probably has rich parents, probably went to a TU, SMU, Baylor, some private school. She came to us from Bank of Oklahoma, so I think she's kind of moving up the ladder. So she's gotten a little better job with us, and so she's kind of moving up the corporate ladder. So when I say, tell me your story, she says, you don't want to hear my story. And I said, oh yeah, that's like my favorite part of these meetings. I really want to hear your story. Where'd you grow up? Tell me about your background. So here's her story. Her father left when she was 2. Her mother is a drug addict. She's taken care of all of her siblings her whole life. She graduated from high school, wanted to go to college, couldn't figure out how to get it all done. Ended up working at the mall. Somebody from a local bank invited her to come apply. She applied, got a couple of promotions, was in kind of a compliance type position. A friend of hers who worked at Regent Bank said, you need to come apply for a position at our bank. It's like a family. She had never had a family, so she applied and got the position with the bank. She loved it, but after she came to work with us, she got married. Her husband's brother lost custody of his 2 children to DHS because of some issue, and they brought a 17 and 35-month-old to come live with her in her home. She had never had kids of her own, has never had kids, but now she's potty training a 17-month-old, trying to find daycare for the 2 kids. And as she told me, my life is a little wild right now. So I asked her, which we always say, how can I support you? Because our belief is that we are to be the splint, okay? We don't heal the finger, but we can support the finger while God does the healing. So I say to her, how can I support you in this? She says, would you pray with me? I said, I would love to. I start to cry, and we have a wonderful prayer together. And I say, how else can I help you? Well, we were able to let her work from home. We helped her find daycare. I helped her find some state programs to pay for the kids. There were all kinds of things we could do to support her in this time in her life, but only if we knew about what was going on and cared about what was going on in her life. Later, this same individual came back to my office. I was able to pray with her and lead her to Christ. That's relational leadership. That's what we are trying to practice and what we are trying to teach. This isn't about pounding you over the head with the Bible. This isn't about judging you. This is about loving you. But the only way I can love you is if I know you. And so as a business person, we practice relational leadership, which is every manager spends 30 minutes a week with their employee talking about whatever that employee needs. You cannot talk about work. If the employee wants to talk about work, you can, but I'm going to spend 30 minutes investing in you. How can I help you? What challenges are you dealing with? What are the areas where I can be of support to you? And that's relationship.
Wow. So because of all this sowing into your employees, as a 94X leader or ambassador, we're calling these people as well, ambassadors, just to repeat from earlier, in case somebody didn't hear this, Regent Bank was named as one of Inc.'s best workplaces for 2023. And out of the 500 plus, I guess, names on the list, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
The only bank in America.
Only bank. Yes, it was the only bank.
So are you saying that if you will sow into your people's lives, that there are benefits from God? God will bless your business?
All I know is my experience, okay? All I can share is what I have seen. And you have to understand that we are a community bank in Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Springfield, Missouri, and surrounding areas, okay? We are not in a particularly fast-growing part of the country, but we are the fastest-growing bank in the country. So the bank has grown 27% a year for 14 years in an industry that grows 3%. Now, we have the same products. It's not like we have some special sauce that we figured out how to do that it's pretty much a commodity. So the only difference that I can see is the love that we try to show to our employees and clients. This extends to your clients as well through our faith and business events, and we try to sow into their lives as well. And the favor from God that I believe comes from treating your employees in that way. I believe the two are related. Now, this is not a prosperity message. So I'm not saying come be a 94X leader and your business is going to go through the roof. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is come be a 94X ambassador, join us, and you will see the fruits of the Spirit displayed like never before.
Well, the law of sowing and reaping is a biblical law. So it's inevitable that you're going to reap if you sow into people's lives. And really, I know you're doing very nice, tangible things for people where they are there at Regent Bank and, of course, your customers. But this really, bottom lining what 94X movement is, it's an evangelistic movement. Your goal is to see people come to Christ. That's with
exactly
this.
Our
and
goal.
Your goal is to sign up a whole bunch of ambassadors. And what that is people that catch the fire and become another Sean Kouplen where they work.
That would be our dream. And there are really 3 ways that a person can do that.
All right, we're going to take a break and find out those 3 ways after this. I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show. Okay, I'm told I've got 6 minutes. I want to make them 60 minutes, but okay, let's do this. 94xmovement.com is the website address to visit for all details about what we're talking about today. There is a book called 94X. There is a workbook called 94X, something we won't have a lot of time to talk about, but there are roundtables that you can be a part of across America, but it's all contained on the website 94xmovement.com. I'm David Warren here with the incomparable Sean Kouplen, and his co-author again is?
Mick Skuvenek.
Okay, so before we took the break, you said there are 3 things to become an ambassador of this 94X movement.
There are 3 ways to join us. You really just hit them all, David. The first way is to buy the book. The second way is to join our online community, which is being finalized as we speak. We're going to have tons of online resources for 94X ambassadors to learn on their own. And the third way is to join a 94X roundtable. And the vision that I was given is that we will have hundreds of thousands of roundtables meeting all over the world. And that's where I believe the greatest impact is going to occur. So if you're interested, you basically can go to 94xmovement.com, click on Join the Movement, tell us how you want to get involved, and then we'll get you additional information. David, the roundtables are groups of 6 to 8 leaders, and it can be in any different types of organization that will meet for 2 hours a month to focus on a particular principle and how we could practice that together. We just support each other in bringing God into our business.
Excellent. Now, let's do a little vision casting before we say goodbye. Where will this be in 5 years?
I believe that in 5 years, we will have 10,000 roundtables meeting all over the world, in countries all over the world. I believe that we will have a staff of 30 who all they do is support the roundtables. I believe we'll be speaking at conferences all over the world about this. And I believe that it will become commonplace that Christian leaders will understand that they can bring God in to their business, into their nonprofit, into their organization, that everyone will know it. That would be the dream of my life.
I use the business term vision casting, but you just prophesied. Sean, I don't know if you know that or not, but you just prophesied that out. I love it. Okay. Wow. Let me go ahead and mention before we say goodbye that you have a daily devotional call-in that we mentioned earlier. It is at 8:17 a.m. Central, which is 9:17 Eastern. It lasts about 13 minutes. Mm-hmm. And you do the Tuesdays, and a different leader does the different days of the week, and it's a devotional for leaders. Well, actually for everybody, isn't it? Everybody's a leader, though.
I lead Mondays and Tuesdays, and then I have 4 friends who fill in the other days of the week. Honestly, my stories were getting so repetitive that I felt like we needed some new voices, and honestly, it's grown a lot since I brought my buddies in to help me. And yes, it's a very brief 13-minute. We use the devotional Jesus Calling, and that's the basis, so we'd love for you to join us.
And you do something every Saturday morning. Tell us about it.
It's called Kingdom Driven CEO Podcast. It's about a year old. We have about 100,000 listeners on Kingdom Driven CEO, and it's very similar. We are trying to bring leadership and faith together in a 15-minute podcast, new content by noon every Saturday morning.
Again, look for the Kingdom Driven CEO podcast on any of the major platforms. Right. And that is by today's very special guest, Sean Kouplen, and that is spelled SeanKouplen. Okay. The web address once more for the 94X Movement is 94xmovement.com. I feel like I need to lie down after this, Sean. We really got a lot of info in today.
We got a lot out there, David. Thank you so much for your preparation. Remarkable.
Hey, come back and be with us. I'm excited. I mentioned earlier that I have signed up for a roundtable, so I'll keep our listeners posted. I want to grow in all these areas that we talked about today.
Me too.
How are we doing on time, Tim? We're done. Okay. Well, for Tim, our sound man, and for Sean Kouplen, I'm David Warren. And as I said at the front end, it's going to be, and it has been, another great road show. You've been listening to The Road Show. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Road Show, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Road Show, an Oasis Network presentation.